Hi, everyone, and welcome to Overfilled the Podcast, Episode 2. I'm Dr. Jamie Kuzner, and I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, Dr. Brooke Messer and Dr. Jason Jedlicka. Today, we have a really exciting episode talking all about residency. So, as we all know, the residency match just started, just matched a couple weeks ago. So, we're super excited for all the new residents. I know Jason and Brooke are excited to have new residents join them. So we're going to talk about clinical pearls. What did we think we can gain from our residency? What did we love doing? What would we do differently? But before we get started, let's talk about what overfilled us this week. So let's start with Brooke. What is something that overfilled you this week?
Yeah.
I know you just came back from vacation, but do you have any fun stories of being overfilled?
Yeah, so we went to visit my parents in Arizona. They've spent a few weeks down there starting their snowbird life. So we went to visit them. So we were in the Mesa area. And I think from a vacation standpoint, it was really fun to see my kids like swimming and comfortable in the pool compared to where they were last year, because it was the same pool, same house last year that they rented. And just to see how much they've grown, because we've committed to swimming lessons every week, like year over year. We're starting year 3 of swimming lessons every week. And I feel like it really paid off because they were just so comfortable in the water. And you just, as a parent, didn't have to be like so apprehensive about every jump into the pool and things like that. Like even my little guy with his life jacket on just did so awesome. So that was, as a parent, really, really fun. Clinically, though, we had a case yesterday of a patient who had had RK, in the 90s, and she previously failed with scleral lenses. So she came in basically thinking that she was headed toward a corneal transplant. But when we did her imaging, her cornea diameter was like a 12.4. So I'm assuming that her last scleral lenses were way too small, probably not oblate in shape. And so no wonder she failed. Like she could see well, but she just could not wear them. Too many bubbles and fogging and all that. And so we put on a nice big lens. The lenses were actually fit quite well right out of the diagnostic set. Of course, had some biolevation in there, and she was 20/15 through overrefraction, and she walked out like, thank God I didn't have to sign up for a corneal transplant today. So just like we talked about in episode 1 about how like amazing it is to be able to change lives, change the course of life, and not have to commit somebody to corneal transplant. That was a great moment yesterday.
Great. How about you, Jason?
Well, other than celebrating a few birthdays at home last week, clinically speaking, I had a moment late last week where I dispensed some lenses to a gentleman I had fitted a few weeks ago. And he's got really bad keratoconus. In fact, he came in, referred from a VA, and has already been signed up to go to the VA Center for the Blind up in Chicago to get his cane and his dog. Of course, his vision's not, he just has keratoconus, so we know he's not going blind. But we fitted him a few weeks ago, and the best we could get through his lenses was about 20/70 in each eye. Well, the exciting thing is, of course, now we have HOA correcting sclerals, and so I immediately signed him up. I said, well, we're gonna fit you in lenses, but we're gonna put on HOA correcting optics because his corneas aren't that scarred; they're just extremely, extremely steep. And so that's great. He came in last week and picked up his lenses and was about 20/60 through them. And he thought things were so good. I said, man, you have no clue what we're going to do for you before we're done. I said, we're going to get these fitted better. We're going to get you seeing better. We're going to put some optics on, and we're going to get you back to being the head of your motorcycle club, which he is. And it's cool because he was already super excited, just having 20/60 vision. But it'll be fun to see where we end up, and I'll hopefully have updates for you in the next month or two as we put on some extra HOA correction and see what kind of vision we can pull in this situation.
Yeah, that's fun because you talked about him. Jason recently visited North Dakota for the NDOA, and on the drive to the meeting when I picked him up at the airport, you had mentioned this guy. So I'm invested. I'm anxious to see how that goes for you.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see because, again, he's clearly got massive HOAs. I think we scanned him and his RMS was 2.0 or something up in the stratosphere. So I'm hoping we can get him to 2025 or 2030, maybe when we're done. It'll just be fun to see how this all turns out. Anyway, how about you, Jamie? What was your week like? How were you overfilled this week?
So I had a really exciting patient I've worked with over the past couple weeks. I met her and she's 30 years old and she has keratoconus, and she had come in just wearing glasses, really thick glasses. She had tried gas perms years ago before she had a child, couldn't wear them because of comfort. She has a 3-year-old, and she came in basically like, I just need some help. I don't even leave my house after 5 o'clock because I can't see well enough to drive. I don't feel comfortable driving my child around. I need to be able to get to work. I feel like I can't even work well on the line. And she was nervous, right? Because she had a bad experience with gas perms. And when I had put the diagnostic lenses in her eyes with the fluorescein, she immediately started crying and bawling, like glow in the dark tears. Because she was so happy that she could even just see with the diagnostic lenses and they were comfortable. So she was like overfilled, right, herself. And I just realized like how life-changing it would be for her that she can leave the house at night. She can drive her child around. She's a single mom. And then we also had a conversation about how she was very nervous about cross-linking. And she had gotten significantly worse over the past few years. I could tell just by her glasses. This was my first meeting with her. So we had a nice little mom-to-mom talk about how I know it's scary, but we can do scary things. And I don't want you to get worse because, you got to take care of your kid. You're a single mom. Like you can't be out with a corneal transplant. And so we had a nice little pep talk. And then she immediately scheduled her cross-linking. But she needed someone to kind of push her in, right? Because I think a lot of times they see ophthalmology, they say you need cross-linking, set up your appointment. And then they Google it and they're scared and then they don't do it for years. Yeah. So we had a nice little heart-to-heart about, we can do hard things that are scary. And she set up her cross-linking appointment. She has her sclerals. So I've been working with her and it's great. We gave her her life back, and that's something that when you're 30 years old, and I just can't imagine, living like you're 95 when you're 30. So that was my thing. And I loved it. She's such a cool patient. So that made me really happy and makes it all worth it.
And they're your biggest advocates for years to come. Like your practice is young, going on, in year number 2 right now. And, she'll be with you for 20 years and she'll be the one that sits in the waiting room and says like, my life is different because I came here. I love that. Where patients start chatting in the waiting room and you just have these little advocates.
I know.
That alone is just for them to feel so moved by their experience with you that they talk about you or what they've done and to other patients. So just those moments.
I love when they walk by like the training room too. If they see someone learning sclerals and they've been wearing them for years, like they'll walk by and be like, "Hey man, I remember like today sucks, right? Today sucks, but it's so worth it." And sometimes it's nice just to have that little, hey, I know this is hard. But it'll be worth it. I've had kids do that with Ortho-K too. Yeah. I had a little kiddo trying to learn how to do Ortho-K, and he had a lot of big kid feelings, and this girl the same age walked by him and it was like, man, it's not fun, but it's so cool not wearing glasses. Yeah. She gave him like a little pep talk. They were both 10 years old. And then he did fine, but it's almost like, she's like, I know it was hard, but I did it. Now I love it.
Yeah.
And so it was like this cool little 10-year-old bonding moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's get on to residency. So I know both Jason and Brooke are residency directors. They get to work with residents. That's super fun. I am not a residency site, but I've done a residency. So I did my residency at Indiana University where I got to work with Jason. Such a great experience. But we thought we could talk about how do you prepare? So you get excited, you get your email, where you're going. And now you're like, okay, now I need to plan my life out. Like, what do I need to do to prepare? Both, personally and professionally. For me, personally, the hardest thing was I matched at Indiana, which I loved Indiana. I was so excited. But I was married. I am married. Not was. I am married. I've been married for 10 years.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I've been married for 10 years. I got married during second year. Okay. And so my husband knew and was very supportive of me doing a residency. He knew I was passionate about it. And he was just like, wherever you want to be, that's where we'll be. He was working at General Motors, which is in Metro Detroit, which is back where we're at now. And back then, this was pre-COVID. So you couldn't just work virtual. You had to go into the office. So I was going to be living separate from him. And so I got, a 1-bedroom loft at Indiana, which I called like my bachelorette pad or like woman pad, whatever, with a 1-bedroom. And he stayed in Michigan with our dog, and he would visit us. We visit each other like once a month, basically. And so sometimes it's hard, like to think about if you have a significant other, if you have kids, like how are you going to separate your time? Like for us, it was better that we were separate because I felt like I could really focus on my residency. Okay. Not everybody is like that. But I didn't want him to leave his good job for a year. So we decided to have him stay at his full-time job as an engineer, make money while I'm in residency. And then I was able to work because when you're a resident, you work a lot of times like 6 days a week,
Long days.
Yeah. I felt like if he would have came with me, it would have been taking him away from friends, family, and his job. And then I would have felt like he was kind of waiting on me all the time. But since I was by myself, I didn't really have anything else to do besides kind of immerse myself in the residency. So for me, like it was great. Obviously, we came out stronger because of it. I've seen others where you either do the match together, which is super cool if you can both match at the same place, or maybe your significant other can get a job where you're at, especially now that everything's virtual. Like nowadays, it'd be so much easier. We always talk about that. Like, can you imagine? You could have just moved to Indiana for a year and worked virtually.
Yeah.
But that was one thing, like personally, that I had to prepare for. And then professionally, I mean, I guess I didn't do a ton. One pearl I have is I loved reading Contact Lens Spectrum because I thought it came out with a lot of new things with contacts, business side of contacts. A lot of interesting cases were in there, and so I read a ton of those issues before residency just to kind of catch up on what's out there right now, because you learn a lot in 4th year, but you don't learn everything, obviously. So that was something I like to do, is once I moved to Indiana, I had a week or so, and I just read as much as I could about residency. So that's how I prepared. Do you remember preparing for your residency much, Brooke, or was it like a whirlwind?
I was lucky in that I matched where I went to optometry school, and my senior advisor on a project was Dr. Tim Edrington, who was the residency advisor at the time. So I felt like I kind of already had sort of an insight into the residency, and it so happened that year that the resident before me also went to SCCO. So we were kind of all around. So I knew him as a student and then as a resident. So it was easy to kind of connect with him toward the end of his residency to prep for mine. I think that, from a what would I do now kind of thing, the clear reports, the scleral lens clear reports, that's the contact lens academic, I can't remember the acronym, but it's like academic research. But yeah, if you look up clear scleral lenses, the PDF, it's a nice long PDF, but it's very comprehensive. And so that's what I would suggest a current resident consider doing, because it's just a really, really nice paper. I've used it to cite for like case reports and things. And then, AF Vanderwarp has I can't remember what it's called, the Scleral Lens Handbook or something like that. That's also a free PDF online.
Oh, yeah. That's
a guide to scleral lens fitting. Yeah.
Yeah. Guide to scleral lens fitting. And that's what I tell my current residents to read ahead of time if they're able to, because that is just a nice kind of like entry level and has a lot of the high points in fitting scleral lenses anyway. But for me, prepping, otherwise, it was more just, finding a good place to live and, trying to think what else I did, but I went to Costa Rica before residency. But yeah, it was just kind of being mentally ready to go all in and be ready to work hard, longer days, being, okay with staying after clinic when you have to get lenses ordered or research what you need to learn. And just overall, just again, like you said, immersion, just ready to go all in, jump in with both feet and work hard. I think that's a great attitude to have. And another thing, you were maybe planning to go back to Michigan, which totally made sense for Colin to stay in that area, where my current resident, they want to be in this area. So her husband moved with her. So they're both in Fargo now. And that's another consideration from a, significant other standpoint. I was single, so I could do whatever I wanted, but Yeah.
I also took a vacation too. I forgot. We went to Napa just because we wanted to be able to go do something before, you start residency and you can't take vacation and then you jump into the real world. So we did take like a week-long vacation because you have like 6 weeks between like graduation and
Yeah.
start. So use that time to, work on yourself.
Recharge.
Have fun. Yeah. Have some fun.
You don't have a license anyway. You can't work.
Yeah.
I know you can't. Yeah. So we're just kind of hanging out. We got a puppy. I potty trained the puppy or whatever. House broke our puppy because I was home for a month. So yeah, just kind of fun stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add for the prep, Jason? You had to prep for 2 residencies. So
yeah, well, I mean, my residencies were so long ago. I'm not sure it's relevant anymore anyway. But, I was thinking about as a residency. Well, I'm not a residency director, but I do work with our resident a lot. Like you mentioned, Brooke, some people are going to be coming from or going into a residency at the same place they studied. And in those situations, you do have a leg up because you already understand the EHR, you already know the doctors you're working with. Those are all great things. But also, though, the downside there is you got to push yourself to get out of your comfort zone and learn new things different than what you've been learning. I do think there's some merit to being at the same place you studied. You get off and running a little bit quicker, but there can also be some downsides. So if you're going into a new place, it's going to take a little longer to get ramped up, and I just think you have to be patient as that process unfolds. I do think that some of the things that I would tell our incoming residents are to talk to the docs you're going to work with and find out, hey, what lenses am I going to be seeing most of the time in the clinic? Okay, maybe the clinic, whether you want to fit something different or not, some of the time I'm sure your instructors will let you, but you're going to do follow-up visits on a lot of patients, and they're going to be coming in wearing lenses they're happy with. And so you still need to learn the lenses that the clinic you're going to work at works with predominantly. And so I always tell our residents, we work with this and that and the other. And what you should do in those weeks leading up to your residency is get certified, go to the fitting webinars and become certified fitter for those products you're going to interact with the most. And then if you want to learn other new ones, that's fine. But make sure you're familiar with the ones that you're definitely going to work with. I love the GPLI webinars. Gosh, you have just years worth of archived webinars there on every topic. And those are great resources. They obviously have the student ones, but I'm talking about now, once you're a resident, you should be watching the regular monthly practitioner videos, webinars. And so those are a great resource. And the other thing I think that sneaks up on people is you've got to submit your case for academy already, like a month into your residency.
Yep.
So if you have an interesting case from your 4th year already, you should be thinking about collecting the information about that patient while you're still at school, whether you're out on an externship or not. You still have access to your school's EHR, presumably, and patient files. So you should, if you've got a good case that you think you could present for a poster, gather that information now before you're done and moved on. So those are just some tips that I would have for incoming residents as far as getting more knowledgeable. Make sure you're communicating again with your future residency coordinator and find out what they want you to do to get ready.
Yeah, that's a good pearl, because I remember feeling like, oh, I need to submit a case for academy, and I've been there for a month and I just barely started seeing patients.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pressure. You might not see a unicorn case within the first few weeks of your residency. So that's a great pearl.
Exactly.
And thankfully that case doesn't have to be like a primary, you don't have to be the primary provider as the resident. You can be a adjunct provider.
Yeah.
So even if your residency advisor, in our case, because we see patients, we could be the primary provider and the residency just observes or adjuncts care. And so that's helpful to at least not get intimidated, but definitely I think keeping that case report on your radar early, so that you can get that poster made for the academy meeting and then get that case report submitted, especially if you're wanting to sit the next year for your fellowship, which is what we encourage our residents to do.
Yeah, for sure. So do you want to talk about what we gained in our residency? Obviously, besides, contact lens knowledge, I thought that residency was really helpful for connections. Like, okay, I got connected to you two just by doing a residency. And honestly, like, the amount of doors that got opened for me is amazing. Just working with industry, meeting other residents from across the country that I'm now good friends with. So not just clinical knowledge. I met so many awesome people. So that's what I gained the most, is just the connections.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
It's we just went through this on a thread on Facebook, like we were talking about earlier last week, because it's Match and everybody's talking about why in the world would anyone want to do a residency when you can get that experience. And of course, I threw a few replies on.
Yeah.
But the point is the point that I made in my comment was, it is not about becoming a better contact lens fitter, because you can become a better contact lens fitter anywhere. It is about, and I tell this to all our applicants too. I said, if you're coming into this residency because you just want to be better at fitting specialty contact lenses, you don't need to do a residency. You should be coming to this residency because you want to develop leadership skills, because you have to precept students and teach them. You should be coming this because you want to develop better teaching skills so that you can then have students and residents in your practice someday, and you can pass on the torch. You should be doing this because you're excited about the idea of speaking to a group of docs about contact lenses, or writing articles, or doing all those other sorts of things. You should be doing this because you want to make connections to industry and other professionals that you will have relationships with the rest of your career, and the richness that comes from that. So it has zero, in my opinion, to do with just being better at fitting contact lenses. It's about everything else. And so again, if you're doing a contact lens residency, you better come into it with the right motives and leave it with the right motives, that I'm now going to take this great year of connections and information and skills and everything else that I've learned, and I'm going to turn that into a career which teaches others and advances the profession and changes lives in a different way than you otherwise would do. Again, the in practice, you guys know, in practice, you're seeing patients 5 days a week. You don't have time to develop posters for meetings. I mean, you do, but you don't have as much time. You don't have as much time to write lectures. You don't have as much time for all these other things, going to all these conferences, which you can do as a residency. Our resident only is in clinic 3.5 days a week. That gives them a day and a half a week to develop personally all these other skills. And that's really the take home. And so the residency, what you should gain is you should gain everything else just as much as your contact lens fitting skills.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, obviously you will gain contact lens skills, but it's funny, I didn't realize how much I was going to love teaching until I was precepting students. I thought I would not like that part of the residency. I really didn't. But I loved it so much. And that's why I love doing workshops, with Zenlens, and I love, teaching the residents when I get to lecture. I was so afraid of public speaking before our residency. And now I've done so much public speaking in the last few years, which is crazy. I used to get so nervous. I would be like sweaty, and it was bad. I had so much anxiety, and it helped me get over that. And now I love it. So I gained that skill, which I didn't anticipate doing at all. What would you say?
I think a lot of people don't realize that, like the three of us and hundreds of other people in this field really do want to help. So if you're doing a residency now, or if you're about to do one, or you've done one in the last few years, and you're thinking, how do I get into doing some of these things? I never learned it, or I still don't quite understand it. Just contact us. We are more than happy to help you find your way into whatever thing you want to do that you haven't had the opportunity to do.
Yeah. And I always tell the residents now, or any future residents, like, come up to us in meetings and talk to us. You don't need to be afraid of us. I was always afraid of, like, these doctors I would see lecturing, like, oh my gosh, they're just going to think, I don't know anything, but so many people helped me that now if I can turn around and help you, like, I would love that. So if you want to shoot me a DM, if you want to shoot me a message, if you want to see me at a conference, like, I'm more than happy to help. We can help you find jobs, in different areas. We know a lot of people. So that's all about what doing a residency is.
Yeah. So for me, when it came to my residency year and what I gained, I think I had the best residency year ever. I by far got the most out of every resident ever, I think. I would go back and do my year again. In fact, I kind of wanted to do another year after my residency year. And I kind of did, because after residency, that's when I joined Jason. And then I got a whole nother handful of years learning from you. And I'm just so grateful for that time, because I know that without my launch pad of residency and then my time spent with you, where I'm at now would definitely not be possible. And I made a bunch of notes when I was thinking about what I gained during my residency year. First off, the meetings were amazing. I loved going to meetings and learning how to network with people. And if I had one piece of advice, and I've said this before at other residency meetings, is that, conferences are fun. You go to Las Vegas for the GSLS meeting, and you want to hang with your co-residents. You want to go do a little gambling, maybe see a show, go out to a nice dinner. But Dr. Edrington actually didn't really let me do that. He kind of had me at his side during the whole meeting. And so we walked to every booth of the lenses that we used at the school. And we used a wide variety at the time because we were fitting corneal GPs and just getting into sclerals in that year. And he introduced me to every lab person. And I thought that was really valuable experience in learning that, this is what you do in an exhibit hall. You talk to people about what you're doing. You talk to people about what you need. And then all of a sudden, people follow up. These people at these companies that want to support you follow up and try to meet your needs. And so that was a really valuable time for me. And Dr. Edrington did the same thing with you, Jason, as you probably remember. You were speaking for a company talking about a scleral lens. And it was at the end of the day. It was one of the last exhibitor sessions of the day. And it was, 4:30 probably. And all my friends were going to the bar, my co-residents. And Edrington's like, nope, we're going to this. I've never even fit this scleral lens, but you're going to this session. So at the end of the session, takes me up to the front, introduces me to Jason. We have a little chat. And then from there, Ursula kind of further connected us. And that's how I landed in Minneapolis. And so again, if looking back on my year, the networking and learning how to do that from Dr. Edrington, I think is very valuable. And so that's what I gained. Of course, like you mentioned, Jamie, the speaking opportunities and things. As a resident at my residency, you help with the Contact Lens 2 course on GP lenses. And so you get up and speak a little bit, which also helped me learn how to build some some PowerPoints and things like that. But by far, the networking is.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Oh, it is so true.
And that's the perspective you have to get when you do this residency is you need to find out who all I can get to meet in this year.
Mm-hmm. And man, do they come through over at random points in your career, when you need it, somebody steps in and helps you. And so, gosh, that networking is just so important. And like you said, Jason, you can learn how to fit contacts over a handful of years after optometry school. It's really about wanting to connect with the industry, be involved, and make a difference. So again, just such an amazing opportunity. I am so particularly passionate about residencies. When I see posts saying, "Oh, you don't need a residency," I'm just like, yes, you do. You do. So with that, we're kind of coming up on our half-hour mark where we want to, stay in our time. And so this week's call to action is to our current and former residents. We want to know what your pearls are. What was the best thing about your residency? What do you wish you did differently? What are your insights to help the current incoming class of residents maximize their year? And so you can reach out to us at Gmail and on Instagram. I think we're Overfilled the podcast at gmail.com. And then our Instagram, Overfilled _ the podcast. So that's where you'll find us on Instagram. And so go reach out, find us. You can share your comments or videos. You can send them in to us and we'll show them on our next podcast. Or we can just certainly share your comments if you'd like to share something on Instagram, Facebook, or email. So yes, and Jason has our Facebook page there too. It's connected to Instagram. They're basically one and the same.
Yeah. And you don't need to do anything fancy. It doesn't need to be, a special setup. Just say, hey, this is what I love. This is what I would have done differently, like a nice 30-second video. Or if you just want to drop a comment on our Insta, Facebook, YouTube, we can always read your comments and we can discuss them.
Yeah. So Thanks, everyone.